Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to Mallory's Weird World Adventures, the podcast. I'm your host, Mallory.
And I'm your host, Michael.
And we're here to show you just how weird this world of ours really is. I'm going to have to just give another little notice today that I'm sorry if we sound a little strange. We are driving on a Weird World adventure right now through the Smoky Mountains.
Yes.
We are working on a Weird World episode as well as a book coming out about the legends and haunts of the Great Smoky Mountains, so stay tuned. Michael is obviously my ghost expert.
Oh, yes. I bring a lot to the table with ghosts.
Definitely. We were definitely in this cabin out here, and the door just slammed behind me, and I was like, it's a ghost!
Yes.
What did you say, Michael?
It was wind, because it's been windy all weekend.
Puppycock.
Wow.
Speaking of ghosts.
That's a fun old-timey saying.
I like it. Speaking of ghosts, today we want to talk to you guys about our adventure filming Weird World Adventures on board the Queen Mary.
Yeah, it was cool.
If you don't know what the Queen Mary is,
And you're not alone, because I didn't either.
he thought it was like, oh, we're gonna sail on a ship, okay, whatever. Like he didn't realize.
I thought it was like a funsy, what was the one that you used to do in Virginia?
the Annabelle Lee.
Yeah, it was like a dinner show, right? I was like, oh, yeah, I guess we
Yeah.
can do it all like folksy boat medieval times. That's how I had a picture. I'm going to go on some paddle boat, and we'll have dinner, and somebody will do some song and dance nonsense, and I'll just be like, all right, it's fine.
But in
It had nothing to
fact-
do. Absolutely nothing to do with what I thought it was.
But in fact, the Queen Mary is one of the few, if not the only, remaining boats around from the time period of the Titanic. It was a luxury cruise line back in the early 1900s.
And it did not hit an iceberg.
It did not hit an iceberg. It was also, they said, quite larger than the Titanic, too. So,
Oh, really? I didn't
mhm.
catch that.
Yeah, they said that's quite a bit larger than the Titanic was. And it is very cool to see because they try to keep the age and class of the boat still there. Like, they didn't modernize it. So you can kind of see what things would have looked like and what it would have been like to potentially be a passenger on board the Queen Mary in the early 1900s. And I think it was functioning for quite some time because Walt Disney was a frequent on the ship, they had said too.
Yeah, when did it stop, actually carrying passengers back and forth?
I'm not sure, I'd have to look it up, but
50s or 60s?
I think 50s or 60s because Disney would have ridden it, so that would make sense to me.
And it ferried troops in World War II, right?
It did.
So it was definitely operational in the war in the mid-40s.
For practical reasons. They called it the ghost ship because they painted it gray, they said, right? And it would hide in the fog at sea and transport soldiers. And, it would be hidden because of the way they had it painted. So that's why they call it the ghost ship. And it's also supposedly supposed to be quite haunted.
Yes. Okay. All right.
We,
This is why you brought me on.
definitely why. We did a historical / ghost interview with one of
One of us
guys.
did more history, and one of us did more ghost, and I bet you'll never guess who did what.
What? I liked the history.
Poppycock, as one might say.
Wow. We did get to go into the ghost, the room of something ghost. It's like they do a seance show now, and they took us into the area where they did the seance show, and it had pictures of all the people who died on board the ship.
That was kind of cool.
It was cool.
And sad. Some people died on
That is fair. And there were some young ones too, so that
There
was
were
also
some young
very
ones.
sad. And in the stairwell, they found some important person dead on the bottom of the stairs. They thought maybe he had fallen when the ship hit rough water.
Well, that was interesting because when it did hit rough water, it sounded like it was no joke. Like, it was not like being on a modern cruise ship and hitting some rough water where you like barely notice, or like, oh, it's a little bit churny today on this mobile city. I think people were severely injured on a not infrequent basis in bad water.
Yes, which might explain.
The stairs were also not up to code.
Oh, definitely
not up to modern code.
Definitely
for sure.
Not.
So I have no trouble believing that they hit some turbulent water and somebody took a nasty tumble down those very not up to code stairs and did not survive it.
Yes. And something
I'd be
that...
surprised if it didn't happen multiple times.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there was a lot of deaths on the ship, right? So I'm sure many of them were because of turbulence.
Yes. Is that what it's called? Is that what it's called on the water?
I don't know. I just freely use
I just
that
said
word.
It, but
turbulent waters, right? Isn't that a thing? Turbulent waters.
I don't know. I honestly, you say it, and
I mean the word turbulence.
I just associate it with airplanes.
We're gonna say yes.
But I can't say I've been a particularly seafaring kind of guy in my life. I've been on some boats, but
I really am not a boat person, so
you're
I
not a
couldn't
boat
help
person.
it.
It's funny.
Can't.
I'm not an airplane person.
I'm fine.
I'll go on airplanes, but I don't enjoy it.
In 2019, I think I was on 35 planes over the year.
Oh my God.
And when that happened, I was like, you know what? I can't be unhappy about planes anymore. I don't like them, and I never liked them. But it's like, okay, this is just your life, and you're going to be like, this is what it is, Mallory. So then I kind of came to terms with the fact that, well, you're going to be on planes. What I thought was particularly interesting about Queen Mary, particularly interesting, was in that time they had obviously mentioned that the people riding on ships obviously had money. It was like the very, very top 1%. Like, it was very expensive. It was, I don't remember how much they said it was, but it was something to the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars today that you would spend.
God, is that true too? I thought
yes.
it was tens. Okay.
No, it was a lot. It was a lot more than I thought it was.
That's for what you would associate being on the ship now with. They had like steerage, where you would keep the...
They had steerage, but even that was expensive.
That's where I would be, right?
Oh, definitely.
Well, like where the Irish people in the Titanic,
yes.
in the very historically accurate Titanic movie.
Yes.
Where those poor Irish, which I would definitely be one of.
You can relate to those Irish?
Well, yeah.
Yes.
I think my great-grandparents on one side and great-great-grandparents on the other, they're all Irish. They were all from my mom's side. I think they did come over on that, kind of. They certainly weren't. Well, I mean,
not
they
on the
were.
Titanic.
Well, not.
Sorry.
Well, I wouldn't be here if they'd gone on that one.
True.
Yeah, they came here as like essentially as indentured servants. Definitely would have been in steerage or whatever it was called.
They were saying that
last
even
class,
even
whatever the lowest
steerage,
class is what they would. Is that what it is?
Yes. There was first class, second class, and third class, which was steerage.
It's where my family feels at home. Last class.
Oh, great. You know what? I've been on board museum. There was a museum in Bremerhaven in Germany where it like showed you what it was like to emigrate from from Europe to the United States, specifically from Germany.
I imagine it's like having no legroom on an airplane.
Oh yeah, except far worse. They showed what the steerage looked like, and it was like you were in this like pin effectively with like these, you know. It was not pleasant, and people are like all vomiting and sick, and you know they're all just in it together. It's just not a
sounds delightful.
Yes, definitely not an ideal situation. But yes, people are vomiting on each other. There's like 30 people in like this one just mosh pit bed. Like there's a bunk of it. It's just it was very not good. But I you know, we're gonna have to like do a follow up on this where we pull up the exact prices when we're not in the car, because he even said that the steerage tickets were like quite expensive. I mean, it wasn't like an affordable thing. People would save up.
Yeah.
You know, they would save up and work to be able to like, you know.
Sure. Well, but also they weren't probably planning on going back. This is not vacation.
That's true.
This is I'm leaving this country and moving to another country permanently for good. So.
However, on board the Queen Mary, that first class that we're talking about,
that was for funsies. Yeah.
That was for funsies, and I thought it was crazy because they said that it would be long. I don't think it was as long as I thought it would be. It was like a matter of weeks that you would be on board. But
it was steam. I mean, it was powered.
But
it's not sail. It's not.
No, I know. It was like weeks, but it was long enough where they would call the missus of the couple, that would be on board the ship, because everyone would, if you had money, you'd have your suites, and they would call the lady of the couple that would be there and ask her what color she wanted the carpets and the dressing. So they would match the room to what the woman wanted, and so a lot of times they would pick it so it would match their dresses. So like the ladies would like because they were paying enough that they would re-carpet the rooms to match the women's clothing.
Well, yeah, I guess if you're spending six-figure amounts to be on a boat for 2 weeks, buy some carpet.
Right. And it was for people that were so wealthy that they had a travel agency on board the ship, which we saw, which was very cool.
It was cool. It was still, I guess, like refurbished to look like how it would have looked back then.
Yes. And it was there for people to plan out their future travels, because they were just moving around and having fun. They weren't really doing much, right? They were just enjoying life.
They could arrange where they were going to arrive. How's my carriage ready?
Yes, and I just talked to Lady Elizabeth here, and her husband are going to safari when they get back off here, and I want to go to safari too. We should arrange it together, so I'm going to go to the agency.
I'm always trying to keep up with Elizabeth.
And set up safari. Something like that, which, I don't know, it just the perspective, I guess, on how frivolous people were.
Oh, people are still frivolous.
Yes.
It's just different. It's
a different type of frivolous, though. Like how
people
it was
haven't
back
changed
then.
at all.
It was just very interesting.
Those people now just have their own planes.
That's true. They're the people that have private jets.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Nothing there has changed.
That's
just
fair.
The toys have changed. The mindset is the same.
That's a valid point. And it was cool. We got to see some of the historical artifacts. They have the gallery upstairs. It looks very much like Disney. You can tell that Disney spent a lot of time there and took inspiration from it, because it looks like the California Adventure Park that's supposed to kind of model like Disney's life. It looks like that. Yeah. And they had, old artifacts and things and certain cool setups. So it kind of serves like a museum, and they do tours, but then you can also stay the night there in some of the cabins, which we did. And
so it's an interesting mix of looking like a museum on certain areas and certain level decks of the ship that are just preserved to look exactly how they would have looked back then. And then also just being able to stay in it as a hotel.
Yes.
Yes. I would not have expected to be able to stay in it based on when you walk in, how it looked.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And it offers something for everybody, because it is historical. People will dress up and spend time on there. They do certain events where they allow people to just come on board and hang out at the restaurant on board the ship. And there's also, the haunted legends and stories. And there's room B340, which is supposed to be, this extremely haunted room on board the Queen Mary. It was on Ghost Hunters. Which was funny. So I knew all about this, and we tried to book it out, but then...
What? But I thought I was the ghost expert, Mallory.
Definitely.
That's not why you brought me on for that?
Oh, definitely was. I just knew about this.
Okay.
And they, deck it out to look like it would back in the day, and there's a little peephole in that window. So the people that, are staying there will cover it up when they get there. But so people can look in and see the room, because it's so famous and supposed to be so haunted. But we actually made a friend on board who's like, well, that's just a bunch of nonsense. It used to be clerical offices.
I did like that.
He
was so unamused by the whole propped up fake lore about that room. He's like, what are you talking about? It was just two nerds doing paperwork in there for years. It wasn't even one of the interesting rooms. That's funny. It's funny how it takes on a life of its own.
Most definitely. And
it looked cool through the people.
It would have been you know what? It's for me whether or not I'm like, oh yeah, this room is haunted. It was more about the idea of telling people like the story. Well, we got to stay in B340 on the Queen Mary. You know, it's about the experience.
Yeah.
Sometimes more than the outcome.
All right.
But
all right.
yeah,
It looked as fancy as the other. I mean, it looked the same as the ones you can stay in, though.
Yeah.
If it didn't have the little lore around it, it would just look like any of the other rooms on that floor, which are all very nice.
Yes.
And are timepieces, preserved timepieces from that era.
Definitely.
Which is very cool to stay in what would have been, a very expensive, rich suite back in that time that is just preserved to look that way.
Definitely.
And yeah, it was nice. It going back to how the mindset is the same in people, just the toys are different though.
Mm-hmm.
If you booked that room on a modern cruise ship, you'd be like, this is a little small.
Yes.
I mean, cruising is within a lot of people's budgets, at least to go for a vacation, 5 nights or 3 nights or whatever. And I don't know, I would have been unimpressed with the space itself.
I will say I stayed on the Carnival cruise recently and got the most expensive room, and it was smaller.
Was it smaller?
It was smaller. It was so cramped. I couldn't believe how cramped it was.
Huh, okay.
The Queen Mary felt more spacious.
Although the ship did. I agree with the ship did.
No, I'm talking about the room.
Okay.
It felt more spacious. It was like staying in like a tiny little cell on the one that I was on, and it might have just been that cruise line. Mm-hmm. They're just trying to squeeze as many people on as they can, which is upsetting because it's like you're spending that much money. Not that it's that much money, but you should have some leg room if you're staying somewhere.
Sure. Well, they took one look at you and were like, look at this white Irish. You're going in steerage.
Well, no, but I've never gone in steerage. That's gross.
We'll give you the good room, Mallory. All right. Put this Irish broad down in steerage. Just tell her it's the good room. She'll never know.
Oh, no. I'm dying. Speaking of room B340,
I think we were talking about how you were poor Irish.
I'm definitely the Rose character. She's my fellow
the
INFJ.
Talking about, again, didn't we recently discuss how you were the villain of Wicked?
Oh no, yes, Glenda.
Not having a great track.
Is she really the villain though?
I think you can make a strong argument that Rose is the villain of the Titanic.
Oh, no.
I'm not saying that the hubby, or they're not married, right?
They're engaged.
I'm not saying he's also a villain. I'm just saying the fact that he's a villain doesn't make her the hero.
That's fair. She does aggressively cheat on. It's funny.
She does hate him, and
yes.
Rightfully so. But I don't know. It's not like she's doing the right thing either.
She aggressively cheats on him.
Yeah, she cheats on him and does the equivalent of taking nudes with her on-ship fling, and then putting it in the fiance's safe
to say "F you,"
but stealing his stuff, not turning down the many $million necklace.
Oh no, she gave the necklace to him.
But she
does give him the necklace.
All right.
She gives him the necklace, and they plant it in Jack's jacket to make it look like he stole it, to try to convince her that he stole it.
Okay.
Yeah. She did give back.
It's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah, she did give back the necklace.
All right, fair.
But what makes her the monster is that she throws it in the water at the end. Like, there's this scientist who is working, has dedicated his life on finding this piece of jewelry, and she married someone else and has a whole family and has grandchildren. Her granddaughter's taking her around in the movie. She's like a grown-up grandchild, and she never once cashed that in for money. And then I think in one of the deleted scenes she said it was because she just didn't want to feel like she owed anything to him. But I think that your grandchildren would really have appreciated that inheritance, even if you just left it for them when you died.
What's the bare minimum? Put it in a museum, then you don't owe it to anybody.
Give it to the scientist.
Yeah, put it in the Smithsonian.
The scientist, like the Hope Diamond. It was based on the Hope Diamond, which is in the Smithsonian.
It's a crazy thing to do. I will also point out that while that does make her a villain, she just, no effort lets the guy die in the water. He tries to climb onto that plank one time, and she's like, well, I guess I fell in once. So we're not going to give it the old college try, and I guess you're just going to have to die.
He could have tried too, though. I think they were both being stupid because MythBusters actually did like a thing on that, and if she took off her life vest and they attached the life vest underneath of the door, they could have both floated on the door. But if like they both couldn't actually, it wouldn't hold both of their weight. Was what they like kind of came up with.
That may be. However,
they could have tried.
They tried one time, and
yes,
I'm just going to let you die. And then, for some reason, also stay obsessed with you for the rest of my life, despite having presumably another marriage and multiple kids and grandchildren, and being still obsessed with this guy that I had a 2-night stand with on the cruise.
I have compassion for Rose because she, her mom was like selling her into this, situation, and I like.
Is that personal to you?
Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Into any situations?
Oh no! But it's more like I will say I had a hard time at the end watching it. This last time that I watched it, when at the very end of the movie she dies, and it kind of like they don't flat out say it, but they show her sleeping, and it looks like she kind of dies in her sleep, and then you see her like all young again, and she goes back on board the Titanic, and Jack is there waiting for her, and the really nice guy that was like the ship designer that like Mr. Andre I think was like they're all there. They're all there like waiting for her, and she's all happy to be back on board the Titanic with Jack, right? And I'm watching it, and I'm kind of just like upset because you knew this guy and you had an affair for like a few days. You married someone else and spent your whole life with him and had grandchildren, and then when you die you reunite with the guy you had a fling with on the ship.
It's just one of those things like, so is this supposed to represent these were the 2 days of my life that were the happiest? Like, you had kids. What about the birth of your children?
And grandchildren.
You had a whole life. It must have been terrible. Were the next 80 years that terrible?
She makes very questionable decisions.
So, okay, anyways, now that we've established that you are her,
oh no,
let's continue on this conversation that has nothing to do with Queen Mary.
Yes, I don't even remember why it came up now.
Valerie's the villain. Anyways, back to the Queen Mary.
Oh, I wanted to talk about room B340.
Okay.
Because while you were looking into room B340, you were like taking pictures of it on your camera, and that guy tried to scare you. What?
To the people.
Yeah, to the people. And this like ship worker comes up and tries to scare Michael. And this is after we conducted a very long like interview with the historian about the ship, and then also an interview with their like the person running it now about like their marketing.
Which were both very good interviews.
Great, yeah. So we had 2 fantastic interviews. We were very happy. We were about to go over to Dark Harbor, which we'll talk about in a second, which is their like haunted maze stuff they do for Halloween. And Mike's taking this picture, and this guy just walks up behind him and tries to scare him, and was like, I really don't feel like doing what I need to do for work right now, so I'm going to take you guys on an extra VIP tour of the Queen Mary.
He was also very disappointed because I happened to be also just turning around when he tried to scare me, and I saw him coming around the corner, and he's like, "Ugh!" And I was like, oh. He's like, oh, I didn't get you. All right, let me take you on another tour, because I don't feel like doing my job.
He took us around for a couple of hours.
Oh, it was a while. He might have been the most knowledgeable person I've taken a tour from on anything.
Yeah.
He knew so much about that ship.
He was like part of the maintenance and like electrical workings of the ship is what he did. Mm-hmm. And with that came just a knowledge of what everything was made out of.
Yes.
And all of the like locations that they didn't show us on the tour. He unfortunately just recently lost his key. Like they took it. They no longer had keys to certain places, so he couldn't take us to the pool. And I was bummed about that because the old pool is like very cool. But we did see it in the haunted stuff.
He's also being
used.
Particularly set up for this haunted thing that we'll get to. So it's probably extra off limits for that weekend.
But it was very cool. He just took us through all the parlors and salons, and he's like, if anyone asks, you're just looking for an event for a space that for your wedding or whatever. And maybe we were.
It was right around there.
It was very cool, and we looked all over the ship into places we had not, we hadn't seen before, and a lot of people weren't able to go, and it was just very cool.
It was very cool. He knew trivia that you would just never, you would never find on your own.
Yes.
Like some of the stuff that looked like it was painted in certain rooms, or maybe even ceramic or some other material. He was like, when we go in there, just lightly touch it. It's painted leather.
Yeah.
And it did not look like leather. I would never have guessed it was any kind of fabric or leather, anything like that. It looked ceramic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was painted leather.
But
that
you touch it,
so
you're like, oh wow,
crazy.
this is actually leather. And it's, yeah.
That was very cool. And even at the end, like, he was so passionate about it, which I guess that's what I love the most about the Queen Mary, is every single person we talked to there was so passionate about it.
They all had a good story of why that boat mattered so much to them.
Yes. And it was just very touching. There's something so endearing and, like, heartwarming about it. I very much appreciated, because it just, when you see the people that don't have to care that much caring that much about something like that, and they all care for their own reasons, it makes you feel that joy and that passion and that love too. And it must be something special if all these people are that passionate about it being special. It was very cool to see that just the love people had for it.
Yeah, it was an extra tier of love for a thing. You can go on cruises or high-end hotels or tourism locations, and you'll get plenty of great people that take their job seriously and do a great job, and make you feel like they're on vacation, treat you like you want to be treated if you're on a vacation or whatever.
Right.
But this was an extra level of caring, like, about the boat, about the ship and history that you wouldn't need to just do a fine job for tourists spending a weekend at this weird hotel.
And I mean, that last guy didn't have to take
the last guy was literally maintenance crew. I don't mean that in a negative way. His job had nothing to do with interfacing with tourists necessarily, and he went out of his way to take us on a very detailed tour of places that we would not have gotten into otherwise on the ship, and had just extensively detailed knowledge about things that we would never. This is after two also great tours on somewhat different topics from people that work there. This third additional unexpected tour added another level of detail on topics that just you would never know about. Yes,
1000%. It was very, very cool. And he even said he did it for lots of people all the time.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, there was the one room that they hosted parties in that he had set up, like DJ equipment and electronics for, and took us in there. And it's another, each kind of party room or convention room or where you'd have people was different thematically. They were all very fancy looking from that time period, but they were all like a different motif.
And he knew
he knew exactly like
the story behind it,
story, why it was painted that way, what types of things would be brought in and hosted there. There was like tiers for the different classes of people back then, right? It was like, well, this is like the high end one, and then this other one that also looks extremely high end, that would have been like second class,
right?
Yeah, I was like, well, it looks pretty.
It's pretty fancy to me.
Pretty fancy to me. But as per our previous episode, I am an uncultured troglodyte, so
that's true. And we did hear, and you also just admitted in this one, your steerage.
Right.
He did say the rich people would continue to go down to the lower class ones as their parties ended.
That's because the best parties are in steerage,
and wound up like kind of in second class and then kind of in steerage because, keep drinking through the night.
Yeah. Yeah, once you have had enough drinks, and you don't care if you're drinking that, steerage class Irish swill.
It's true.
Anyways, he brought us into the one that was painted to be
like a
party
circus.
motif. It was a circus motif. You're right.
Yes.
And
it was
even
like a party circus.
You even pointed out like, well, those walls are painted to look like the people are looking in at you from an outside window.
Yes.
Once you knew that, like, oh, that's absolutely what it is. But I wouldn't have picked up on that myself.
Yes.
And there's a big mural on kind of the main wall that you would host the event at. And he was like, I bet you can't find the mouse.
That's right.
And I did not find, sad to say, I did not find it without his hints.
He gave some guidance.
I think I
found it with guidance.
All right. But there was a story, and it was the two like competing owners of the two boat, the big. What is it called? What was the two people? Lady something and.
It was two ladies, right?
It was a guy and a lady.
Okay.
Well, they're all families, right? Whoever the head of the family was at the time, which one was a lady something, and I forget who the other person was. They could have been both. But one of them made the claim that they were like the cleanest ship liner system, and there wouldn't be a rat on it. You can't find a rat in it. So they painted there
was a mouse painted in the motif.
They had the person paint it the other side out of like, here's a few extra bucks and paint a mouse on it. Yeah. Now they can't say they don't have a rat on the ship.
Yeah, that was good. That was pretty good. That was a good story. I did like that a lot.
Just spite for no reason.
He had good. Oh yeah, you're all about spite. The long game.
Yeah.
Torturous long game.
Never forgive.
It was quite fascinating, just the amount of knowledge he had on like the materials and paintings and the anthropology and the history of it. I mean, the whole thing was very cool. And then
the slope of the ship is also.
Oh, that's right. We got to talk about that. They think a lot of people believe that the ship may be haunted because it's arced in a way where if you're standing on one end of the long hallway of the ship, when you look
two
towards
very
the other
long
end,
parallel hallways through the decks.
Yes. And if you're on one end and you look down to the other end, you would think that it would be very straight and flat. And in modern times, it would be.
And when you're walking it feels pretty straight and flat. Well, it is very straight, but it also feels flat.
Yes.
The slope is very gradual, and it's just such a long ship that you kind of don't notice it.
You're like bananas.
But yeah, it's shaped like a banana, so the middle of the ship lies lower than either end. And it's a big enough curve where we did it.
Yes, we did
If you each walk to one side of it, you can basically see the other person's shoes just looking straight ahead down the hallway.
Like their legs a little bit.
A little bit of their legs.
But that's it.
So
it's almost like if you're at one end and you don't quite know what you're looking for, and you just look and you're going to see these pair of legs kind of walking towards you, floating around. Like, that's probably why a lot of people think, oh my gosh, it's haunted, because they see these, floating legs. Which I think is very interesting. And it's cool to see. Like, we did the whole walking from one end to the other to get to experience what that actually looks like. And it was very, very cool. And then...
I think we just debunked those ghosts.
Oh, some of them, maybe. Not B340, though.
Oh.
Definitely not B340.
Excuse me.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. I don't think there's anything to debunk there.
Well, it was funny because when we were over it at one point, too, you can hear there's a haunted maze, like, on board the ship, and you could hear it underneath that room very loudly, like just the...
Well, specifically, there was a haunted maze.
Yes.
Now. Because we went for Halloween.
Yes, for Halloween.
That's not just
a permanent
all the time feature.
But you could hear it underneath the room, and you're like, well, maybe this is why some people think it's haunted. If they come around Halloween time, you just hear everybody downstairs in the haunted maze. Which, I guess, speaking of, the other reason I really wanted to go on board the Queen Mary is because I'd never actually stayed on there, and I'd always wanted to. And the Queen Mary conducted my personal favorite haunted maze around Halloween time for years. And, it was the one that I had to do. Like, if I had to pick one, that would be the one I would do, because it's so uniquely different than any that you could do elsewhere. And they stopped doing it during COVID. And, there was one Halloween during COVID where nobody did any haunted mazes. And then the next year, exactly. And then in 2021, they all kind of opened back up with some regulations, and the Queen Mary didn't open back up. They didn't have Dark Harbor, and I was devastated because I'm like, well, that's my one. It came back in 2022, and it was Shacktoberfest. And like Shaq tried to do his own, but I didn't personally go, but I saw videos and reviews on it, and it was just not good. Like, it was not...
I'm shocked.
I know. It was not Good. So this year, they announced that they were opening back up Dark Harbor. That's what they call it.
Shocktoberfest Shacktoberfest wasn't great after coming off hits like Shaq Fu, the classic Super Nintendo video game, probably in the top few games of all time.
Really? I'm definitely not going to check that out. I'm still butthurt he stole the Queen Mary Halloween. Just saying.
You mean improved it?
Definitely not. And this year was the first year since, I guess, 5 years? 2019? Okay, yeah, since I did it in 2019. So it was the first time in 5 years that it came back. And they announced it. And I'm like, well, we have to go do this.
It'll always be Shacktober to me.
Oh, well, you didn't even do Shacktoberfest. You don't even know. I was so excited that it came back. So I'm like, well, we should stay on board the Queen Mary and do the interviews for the show. And then we have to do Dark Harbor. And I mean, how I would explain it to people, which doesn't do it justice because I did not communicate it well with Michael either because he thought we were going on board the Annabelle Lee. But
I might also just be an idiot.
But it is basically, you know, a park outside of this gigantic ship. You know, again, it's bigger than the Titanic was. And there's a little park outside of it with, you know, attractions and a few fun little rides and things.
A medium-sized carnival.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. A medium-sized carnival. But then there's like 6 or so, somewhere around that, mazes.
It was 5 or 6.
Yeah, and that are there that you walk through, and some of them are in the actual park that are built, and then there's always about 3 that are on board the Queen Mary itself. So you kind of cross over onto the ship to do 3 of the mazes.
Yeah, at least one of them was on and off. You're kind of transition from starting off the ship onto the ship.
Yes.
In the maze, which is kind of cool.
It's very cool. It's unlike anything I've done before because you're going through the old abandoned pool on the Queen Mary and that area.
That's very cool.
And then these, like, you know, abandoned engine rooms that aren't, you know, functioning anymore, that have all this machinery. And then, you know, you're looking out, there's like the circular windows all around. It's just very unlike anything you've seen.
Just the era itself, just by having preserved the ship from that time period, has a haunting feel to it by our modern tastes. I'm not saying that the tastes weren't good, but they're not modern. You know, they're definitely of that period.
Yes.
The carpeting, the railings, it felt a little Shining, the Shining
yes, definitely,
hotel to me.
Definitely.
Just the way the halls are structured, the way they are carpeted, had that like red maroonish coloring scheme with like gold handle.
Yes.
It felt like that. So it's already a little creepy.
Yes.
As somebody who largely doesn't care about the ghost stuff at all, I'll grant you that just the ship itself does have that vibe.
Yes.
So it just made, then when you actually try to spookify it, works great.
Yeah, because it just adds to it immediately. And my favorite scare it's not even ghost related. You're walking on a bridge over the old engine.
Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers if you ever go to the Queen Mary Dark Harbor. You're walking on an old bridge over the engine room.
Yeah, you're in the belly of the ship.
Yes. And it's rigged to suddenly drop like 6 inches.
Yeah,
it's enough to scare you. Mm-hmm. Enough to make you go, oh my God, I'm falling.
Not enough to be dangerous in any way, but enough to give you that jolt of the ground just went away.
I'm falling. And it's just, that one got me. The first time I did it, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was cool.
And then there was one that was about the pool. And
that was very cool.
They created this scene like you're walking through the water.
You're like
of the pool.
Under the pool.
Yes.
You're in the pool is obviously empty. You're walking through the old emptied out pool. So you're in the bottom of the pool, which is pretty deep.
Yes.
It's well above your height.
Yes.
And then they made it look like there is fake water above you. So it looks kind of like you are walking through the water. And there's dead bodies.
Yes.
There's mist. And then there's floating bodies in the fake water above your head. as if they're drowned bodies looking down at you.
It was
very cool.
Very cool. And it's they do a very good job playing with water and mist and making things look like you're treading through water.
Mm-hmm.
That's something they do very well there, because my favorite maze used to be this bayou one that it was kind of there this time, but it was different.
Mm-hmm.
They used to do it where you were walking through this bayou and it looks like you're in the water and it's green.
Mm-hmm.
And it's made just to look like you are actually walking through water.
Yeah.
The way they have the mist lit up and on here, and you can't see anything under it, so you're kind of trying to figure out where to go. And it was kind of hard to see where you were supposed to go, so we were a little unclear about it. And I remember, I think, turning to Jimmy and saying, where do I go? Because I was in the front.
Mm-hmm.
And this person in a ghillie suit just stands up right in front of me. I had no idea he's there because he's underneath the mist part, and like points where to go. And they got me. I rarely get scared or like jumpy in those things, but I screamed. They really got me in that moment. I did not anticipate that happening. So they're very good with the water stuff. And they used to have one maze that looked like an old ship where they would sometimes pick people. They picked us one time to go like an alternative route.
Mm-hmm.
And it had an interactive section where you could climb on like the ropes of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So you were like climbing and sliding down and going
Mm-hmm.
through these kind of like maze-like things,
Yep.
which was very cool. And then every now and then it would like splash water, and then you would get wet because water just like splashes
Mm-hmm.
over into it. It was very
It's cool.
unique and different, and that's why that's my favorite one, because the theme is so strong and it's so bizarre.
I like when you got. I like when they get you. It's fun when they get you.
They rarely get me.
I know they really get you. It's funny that they really get you because you're all about these types of things for Halloween. We have to go to all of these things, by the way.
Yes,
Just
we
in
do.
general.
We do.
And the first one I went to, you were all about going to it, and we went. And I just figured you're going to get all into it. You know, you're going to be one of the, oh, yeah! And then you walk through the thing like you're having no fun at all. If I hadn't known you, I'd been like, this chick hates being here. She is having no fun. Not a crack, not a smile. You just stone face, walk through, no interaction. And I'm more interactive. I was the one giggling and laughing, and you're just no comment, no laugh, no little snicker, no uncomfortable like tee-hee, nothing. Just nothing.
I think it's the OCD a little bit. I can't be. I have to like anticipate what's coming, or I will get scared, right? So I'm like focused on, well, there's gonna be someone around that corner, and I bet you there's gonna be someone here.
But even your body language is just like purposely stoic. You're not even budging. It's
I'm
like
putting on a brave face.
It's all bullshit.
Wow. I'm putting on the brave face, and I'm plotting where these people are going to come from so they don't get me.
Your brave face is indistinguishable from I'm having no fun at all face.
Well, I should also then bring up my friend Melanie, who comes with
in
us.
stark contrast.
My very good friend Melanie. We do the haunted house stuff every year. You know, when I would do Dark Harbor in the past, she'd come with me. We do Halloween Horror Nights. We did the whole shebang. And she is full on like someone is murdering her in every maze, and she's having the time of her life. She's like, oh no, I love it so much, but it's just like and sometimes she starts, you can't get me, I see you. Like she'll interact with them and yell at them.
People working at it chased her out of the maze. And then people just at the event, as she like came screaming and running out of the maze with people following her out, were clapping for the performance. I mean, they should hire her just to
be scared.
Yeah.
I will say, I think my favorite.
That interaction was scarier than anything else that happens. And you're like, this person might actually be dying right now.
I don't know. You know, we went into like the mental institution one, and she was and one of the actors said, I think this patient needs an Ativan. It was so good. Yeah, she is. Yeah. She gets so into it in the best way. So she's my really favorite person to go.
It really added to my experience.
And it's not just like the horror stuff. It's also rides, I have to say, because we used to go to Disney. We didn't. We used to go to Disney together, and we were riding.
You were a Disney adult.
Yes, because I was a Disney adult, and we were riding the Matterhorn. Which, by the way, I just don't like the Matterhorn because it's so old. It's like, it just hurts you, right? You're like, this is so old, it's hurting me. Like, it's not fun for me. It jumbles me and I get headaches on it. And I think she loved it, so I would like make the sacrifice, right? So we're riding
What
it.
a pal.
I know, I'm such a great friend. I'm such a great friend.
Such a great friend.
And so we're riding it, and it comes to the end, like, you're just going, it's almost like a roller coaster if you haven't ridden it. It's very similar, but it's a bobsled toboggan kind of thing.
Yeah,
and we're going through, in the very end, you go down a slope, and then you kind of splash over some water, and then it just kind of abruptly stops. And she's going, and we stopped, and she's still going for like a minute after it stops, right? And there's a line of people around the Matterhorn waiting to get on it that are all just staring like, is this woman okay? Just gawking at us like, should we call someone? it was great.
Blink twice if you're being held against your will.
Are you all right? Anyway, I feel like we might have been derailed enough, and we are arriving at our destination in 1 minute. So I feel like we should end the episode here.
Yeah, I think we covered the big. It's definitely worth seeing.
Yes.
Both the Queen Mary, just as a historical timepiece, and the Dark Harbor event.
Yes,
specifically.
Both absolutely wonderful. If you're in Long Beach, California, please visit the Queen Mary. Go for a tour, or better yet, stay the night. Get to experience it yourself. And Halloween season, I can't recommend more. Dark Harbor at the Queen Mary. Alrighty, thank you so much for hosting with me today, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And until next time, everybody, stay weird.